Have you ever noticed how the way you think can completely change the way you feel? Your brain is adaptable and can be trained to respond differently to everyday situations. This is possible thanks to neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change over time. If you feel stuck in negative thinking, know that this can change. Today, I'm going to show you how to train your mind to think and feel more positively. So, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because this knowledge can truly transform your life. Have you ever caught yourself reacting the same way to certain situations, as if stuck in a pattern that's hard to break? This happens because the brain creates mental shortcuts, reinforcing the thoughts and emotions we repeat most often. If you frequently feel anxious, stressed, or pessimistic, your brain strengthens these connections, making these responses automatic. But the good news is that this cycle can be broken. Neuroplasticity is the brain's incredible ability to change over time. For a long time, scientists believed that the brain became fixed after childhood, but research has shown that it's always changing and adapting, no matter your age. This means that by changing your thought patterns, you literally alter the structure and chemistry of your brain. Our brain works like a muscle. What we exercise becomes stronger. If we feed negative thoughts, we reinforce that pattern. But if we start training our minds to think in a more positive and rational way, we create new neural connections, making this process feel more natural over time. So, how can we use this ability to our advantage? That's exactly what we're going to explore in the next few minutes. Imagine you're in a supermarket checkout line, in a hurry. The cashier is taking too long because the man in front of you seems to be struggling to get his money out. Your impatience rises and you think, why doesn't he hurry up? Doesn't he realize he's holding everyone up? Your body immediately reacts to this thought. Your heart rate increases, stress builds up, and frustration takes over. But then, you notice that the man is visually impaired and is carefully identifying the bills by touch. Suddenly, your irritation disappears and is replaced by understanding and empathy. The situation hasn't changed, but the way you interpreted it has, and that completely transformed your emotions. This experience highlights a key principle of neuroplasticity. Our emotions are not just automatic responses to external events, but to the meaning we give those events. Often, we react with anger, stress, or frustration because we interpret situations in a negative or rushed way. But when we shift our perspective, our feelings change as well. Our brain is constantly recording and reinforcing thought patterns. If we train our minds to always expect the worst in situations or in people, that becomes the strongest and most automatic pathway in our brains. But neuroplasticity teaches us that we can rewire our thinking. By questioning our automatic thoughts and trying to see situations with more patience and understanding, we strengthen healthier neural connections. What if, instead of assuming the worst about people and situations, we practice more patience and empathy? If we train this skill, we can transform our emotions, reduce stress, and make our daily lives much lighter. For a long time, scientists believed that the human brain was like a clay mold that hardened over time. The prevailing idea was that after childhood, neural connections were mostly fixed, making it extremely difficult to learn new things or change thought patterns. But recent research has proven otherwise. Our brain is incredibly flexible and capable of adapting throughout life. This phenomenon is called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize its neural connections in response to new learning, experiences, and even environmental changes. This means we are not stuck with automatic patterns of thinking and behavior. We can literally modify how we think, feel, and act over time. This concept has been revolutionary in many areas of health. It explains, for example, how people who have suffered brain injuries can regain lost functions, how new habits can reshape the mind, and even how conditions like depression and anxiety can be treated by changing thought patterns. If your brain can change, that means you don't have to accept your limitations as permanent. If you often feel anxious, pessimistic, or stressed, know that it is possible to train your mind to respond differently. In the next sections, We'll explore practical examples of how this happens. Neuroplasticity isn't just an interesting theory. It happens all the time and can be observed in many real-life situations. Let's look at some fascinating examples that show how the brain can adapt and change in incredible ways. Daniel Kish, the man who sees with sound. Daniel Kish lost his sight as a baby, but that didn't stop him from developing an extraordinary ability. He uses echolocation, a technique similar to what bats use, to perceive the world around him. By making small clicking sounds with his mouth and listening to the echoes, he can detect obstacles, recognize shapes, and even ride a bicycle. Studies show that in blind individuals who use this technique, the visual cortex, which typically processes images, starts interpreting reflected sounds instead. In other words, the brain reorganizes itself to compensate for the lack of vision, proving that it is adaptable and capable of creating new connections to adjust to an individual's needs. Cognitive behavioral therapy and brain changes. Another powerful example of neuroplasticity comes from studies on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Research has shown that after just 8 weeks of therapy, patients with depression exhibit physical changes in their brains. The hippocampus, a region associated with memory and emotional regulation, increases in size. Meanwhile, the amygdala, which is linked to exaggerated emotional responses like anxiety and fear, becomes less active. This proves that changing thought patterns through therapy not only improves emotional well-being, but also physically restructures the brain, making it more balanced and resilient. Creating new neural pathways. Another fascinating aspect of neuroplasticity is the ability to replace negative thought patterns with new mental habits. If someone is used to always expecting the worst in situations, their brain strengthens that pessimistic thinking pattern. But if they consciously begin to challenge these thoughts and adopt a more rational and optimistic perspective, new neural connections start forming. With repetition, old neural pathways weaken and new ones become stronger, making positive and balanced thinking more natural. This means anyone can train their mind to react differently to challenges, reducing stress and improving overall well-being. Our brain is constantly evolving. The question is, how do you want to shape it? To better understand how neuroplasticity works in daily life, imagine your brain as a sandhill. When rain falls, the water flows down, creating small pathways. If the rain continues in the same way, these pathways deepen and become natural trails where the water flows automatically. Now, think of these pathways as your thought patterns. The more you repeat a thought, whether positive or negative, the stronger it becomes. If you're used to reacting with stress, anxiety, or pessimism, your brain will follow that trail automatically because it's already well established. But what if you wanted to change the direction of the water? At first, it would be difficult. You'd need to carve new paths, redirecting the water elsewhere. This process requires effort and repetition, but over time, the old pathways weaken and the new ones become deeper and more automatic. The same happens with your thoughts. If you start challenging negative patterns and replacing them with more balanced and healthy interpretations, you'll be creating new neural trails in your brain. It may feel challenging at first, but with repetition, your brain will learn the new path and adopt it naturally. This means that even if you've spent years reacting in a certain way, it's possible to retrain your mind for more positive and healthy responses. Your brain is plastic and always ready to change. You just have to teach it the right path. Neuroplasticity not only allows us to change thought patterns, but is also key to overcoming emotional and psychological challenges. A striking example of this is the treatment of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, through exposure and response prevention therapy. Imagine a patient with severe OCD related to hygiene. He feels an uncontrollable urge to wash his hands dozens of times a day, believing that if he doesn't, he might get sick. Each time he gives in to this compulsion, his brain reinforces the behavior, making it increasingly difficult to break. Now, through exposure therapy, he begins a gradual process of change. Instead of washing his hands immediately, he is encouraged to wait a few minutes. At first, this causes intense anxiety, but over time, his brain starts to realize that nothing bad happens when he resists the compulsion. With repeated practice, new neural connections begin to form. The extreme urge to wash his hands starts to fade because the brain learns that the action is not actually necessary to prevent danger. Studies show that this type of therapy physically alters brain circuits, reducing the hyperactivity of the amygdala and leading to more balanced emotional responses. This case demonstrates that even deeply ingrained patterns in the brain can be modified. And this doesn't apply only to people with OCD. It's relevant to anyone who wants to change habits, reduce anxiety, or improve how they handle daily challenges. If your brain can change for the worse, it can also change for the better. And much of that process is in your hands. Neuroplasticity proves that you are not stuck in the same thought and behavior patterns. Your brain can change, and even small shifts in the way you think can transform how you feel. We've seen that the brain adapts throughout life and that it's possible to train the mind to create healthier mental pathways. You have the power to reshape your thought patterns and build a more balanced emotional reality. If this video resonated with you, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And tell me in the comments, what thought pattern do you want to change in your life? See you in the next video.